Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again for Edible Software Training. Hope everybody had a great Labor Day. So today, what we're going to talk about is packouts. So for those of you who do use packouts or maybe don't use packouts that often, there's actually a couple of different reasons why you could use packouts. Of course, the main feature or the main reason is for repacking. It's collecting raw materials or even work in process items and combining them to make a finished good, what you will actually be selling to the customer. So that is the main purpose. Of course, it can be used the other way for processing. If any of you break items down into smaller units and you don't have them set up as units of measure, maybe you have them set up as separate item codes, that is something that you can do as well. Another reason why you might use them, or another reason for those who don't repack or don't process, uh, another good option for packouts is if you needed to exchange lots, if you needed to repack a quantity of one of a single item code into a completely new lot for the same item code, then you could do that as well. So you can repack from the same item into the same item. So that's another thing that you can do in packouts. It doesn't just have to be for processing. And if you do choose to do it that way, instead of doing like an inventory adjustment, you have a little bit better traceability as far as where this quantity went. But either way, I'm going to go ahead. That's just a little summary as to what packouts can be used for. I'm going to go ahead and start going through the process. So before we actually get into the normal packout screen, which is under inventory, packouts, process packouts, regular packouts, I'm actually going to start off with a packout standard. So for those of you who don't know, the packout standard is simply a recipe. That is all it is. It is simply a recipe of what is being used and what is being made. It has no effect on your inventory or anything like that. It's just a draft of what we may or may not use, and we can come back to this standard and reference it at any time. We can make updates to this standard. We can do whatever we need to. So everything is pretty much open as far as the standard is concerned. So again, I went to inventory, packouts, packout standards. And I have two set up already. So just to show you how I created these standards, you would click new, you would create a code for the standard. So I have up to 8 characters. Typically, what I would recommend is using whatever the item used is, that might be a good code for the packout code. And then, of course, you can be more specific in the description. If you're making multiple, if you're making multiple items made, then you might choose just a common denominator, like a common feature for the items made as the code. And then you will start adding your items used and start adding your items made and start working with the units and everything like that, the quantity that's going to be taken out and the quantity that's going to be processed. So again, I've actually made a couple. So instead of going through the steps on creating these, because it's pretty self-explanatory, just click add your items, add quantities. I'm going to go ahead and just step through what I've already done. So I've got 2 standards that I've created for you today. I've created a test pack code. I've actually created 3. So I've created a test pack code. This one is very, very basic. This is, I'm taking celery sticks and I am making celery diced. So what I did, of course, is I did, like I said, I clicked new, created my code, which is just test pack code. In this items used tab, I'm going to go ahead and add all the items that are going to be taken out of my inventory. So whether these are work in process items or whether they are raw materials, I'm going to go ahead and add those. So I'm taking celery sticks. So I just clicked add, added my celery sticks item code, and I put in a quantity. Now the quantity has to be more than 0 when you're creating this standard. However, it can be whatever you want. If you typically take a certain number or a certain quantity whenever you're making these items used, you can go ahead and start with that. Or it can just be the minimum amount that you would take. So here I just put in 10. and I chose cases as my unit of measure. Of course, you can always choose a separate unit of measure if you're using eaches or any breakdowns. And then the free item I'm going to talk about in just a second. So I can mark this as a free item or anything like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to the items made tab. And from here, I would go ahead and add whatever my items made are, or whatever items are going to be produced from this expected pack out. So I'm going to go ahead and select any items that I can make. So you can add multiple items made from a single item used. You may not make both of these during this pack out or during this actual repack. You may only create one of these. That's perfectly fine. For the standard, again, we're just trying to get all of the possibilities in here. So I went ahead and added both of my options, a 3/8 inch and a 1/8 inch, and I put in about how many cases are made for each. So I went ahead and put 5 and 5 if I am going to make both. Of course, if I only make one, then it would be just a 1-to-1, so I might make 10. That's all perfectly fine. We can go ahead and update that later. And of course, again, you choose your unit of measure. So maybe I'm not making cases, maybe I'm making eaches, or so on and so forth. The last part is free items. So marking an item as a free item essentially takes away the dependency. What I'm creating right here, as far as this pack out is concerned, is a dependency between what is being used and what is being made. I'm saying strictly, if I take 10 cases of these celery sticks, I'm going to make 5 cases of these celery diced. So if when I make the actual pack out, when I process the actual pack out itself, I say, okay, I intend on making 10 cases of this, then my item used will double respectfully. Or vice versa. If I say I took 20 cases out, then 10 cases will be made. So that is what this free item is. If this is not checked, then that dependency is pretty much locked. Now, of course, you can change that when you're actually doing the pack out. You can unmark items as free items, but essentially that is what that is. If you want it to come in automatically as a free item, you can go ahead and select that here in the pack out standard. Right here, when setting up the standard, there's no dependencies. I can go ahead and update these quantities as needed in this screen. The dependency also, this free item dependency also matches between item used. So if I do intend on making both these items used, then if I update this to 10 cases, then this will update to 10 cases, and again, this will update to 20 respectfully. So this free item matches between all of these. Add-on cost and labor. I'm going to actually jump over to my other standard that I created to show you what that looks like. So this beef standard, I created another one for those of you who might actually be processing. So I have 2 items made. And so when I do my add-on costs and labor, if you wanted to add labor costs to an item, then you would go ahead and add the item made. So again, it's whatever item is being produced. You would go ahead, and I'm going to click edit so I can show you a little bit better. You're going to choose a reference line. So we're going to choose the item being made. If I did not choose a reference line, if I simply added a line, did not choose a reference line, and put in number of hours and hourly rate, that is going to apply and distribute to both these lines. So what I did here was I went ahead and selected the reference line to make sure that only this amount applied to only this line. So this $15, if I only made this one case, then it's only going to apply to this item. That labor would not apply to this, or vice versa. Here I have a separate amount of labor and a separate calculation for this line. So again, that's what those reference lines are. This is also important to note in the items used tab. If there is a reference line, so let's say I'm making multiple items made, you can have this right here I'm using as a more easy explainable example. I'm using a pretty simple example here of just selecting one item and breaking it down into multiple, or more often than not, like the celery, it might just be a 1-to-1. But maybe I have multiple items actually being made from different items. Maybe I'm taking this half cow and maybe I added in some, some supply items. So let's say I have some wrap, or I have some boxes, or I have some specific trays that belong to a specific item code. So if that is the case, I would go ahead and add those items. Now, I don't have anything like that right now, so I'm just going to add an example item just to show you. This cilantro only refers to this brisket. I use it as a spice. Not sure why, but this is that cilantro is only going to be used for this. So I want the cost of that cilantro only to be applied to this line. So the same thing with the add-on cost for labor. I go ahead and select which item I'm selecting that for. So now I know this cow half is being produced is producing multiple items, but the cilantro is only being rolled into a specific item. So again, very important if you are planning on making multiple items. If you have items used referencing a specific item being made, then you want to make sure you have that reference line selected. Otherwise, it's going to apply to everything. And of course, we don't want that. All right. So, but as you can see, what I was talking about earlier was that free item option. That free item does apply both to labor as well. So if this labor is always going to be the same, depending on what I make, this is going to be my labor charge, then I can go ahead and do that. However, if I am going to maybe change it depending on the amount of pounds is being made, or the amount of or the quantity that is actually being produced, if I wanted to change my rate or change my number of hours, I can go ahead and do that. So I mark this as a free item so that I can go ahead and do that. After you've added in your lines for your labor, you'll want to go ahead and point it to the correct GL account. Right now, I don't have a labor account in this specific database, but if you are using labor, you will more than likely have a labor account under your expenses. All right. Summary is simply a summary of exactly what's happening. So here I have this item used. I'm breaking it down into these items made. And then if you have any special instructions, when you print out the pack out, you can go ahead and put those special instructions in here. So if you have any, this is the recipe, quote unquote, that we have for edible. But if you have any actual recipe amounts and specific instructions for that recipe, you can go ahead and put them in here. Otherwise, that's about it. Really quickly, just to touch on the add-on costs. These add-on costs are purely internal. So if you are using an outside service, or a separate repacker that you intend on paying for this pack out, then you do not want to use these add-on costs. These add-on costs are simply adding value to the items being made internally. It works very similarly to labor. However, here we already have our add-on code selected, so we don't have to choose that or that account. We simply choose the code, choose the reference line and the cost, and whether it's a free item or not. But again, that is up to you whether or not you want to use that. But if you are planning on using a separate, outside service to go ahead and perform this pack out, then you will not want to use the add-on cost. All right. So anyway, that is the standard pack out, or the pack out standard. Again, I'm going to go ahead and close this, and again, we're going to go through consignments later on. There's a separate area for consignment packouts. So if this is being used for a consignment packout, you will want to go ahead and flag that. Otherwise, I'm just going to leave this be for now. So that is a packout standard. That's simply setting up a recipe that we can reference later on. So for the actual packout, for actually removing inventory and making inventory, I'm going to come to inventory, packouts, process packouts, and regular packouts. Of course, if you were doing consignment packouts, you would go right below it to consignment packouts. It's pretty much the same exact screen. The only difference is it will be marked as a consignment packout, and you can only use one item and one lot when doing the consignment packout. That is one of the features for consignments, so that we can keep track of that. Of course, for regular packouts, we can use whatever we want and however many lots we want. So to start a new packout, I'm going to go ahead and click New on the right side. What it does is it creates a packout number very similar to our invoice numbers or our purchase order numbers. Once it's created, it can't be deleted, so it's a user to lose it. However, in packouts, it's very nice. There's a feature if you created a packout number and didn't use anything in it, the next time you click New, it will tell you, hey, you have an unused packout number. Do you want to use it now? So that's kind of nice. But either way, it'll create a packout number for you. You have a description, a warehouse that you are going to perform the pack out in, a packed on date, which is basically the post date. So whatever date is entered in this pack date, forget it, ignoring the start date and end date for now. This is purely for reporting purposes. The packed on date is when that new inventory is going to post and when the items used are going to be taken out. So very, very important, this packed on date. So what I'm going to do right here, if I was starting from scratch, if I was just creating a pack out from scratch, which you can always do, I would go ahead and update that description to what I'm making. It's not required, but it is completely recommended so that you don't lose track of what was actually done. I would choose my warehouse, add my items used. So as you can see, it's set up very, very similarly to the Packout standard screen. I would choose my items used, choose my items made, put in my quantities, my weights, whatever I need to, and go on from there. But what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to select a standard. So over on the right side, I'm going to hit select standard, and I'm going to go ahead and choose that test packout code. So this is that celery item. So I'm going to click OK. And here it went ahead and it populated the items that I had in that standard, and it populated the quantities. And again, it populated the fixed item option. So if I, again, updated here saying, okay, I'm actually using 20 cases of these celery sticks, I come over here and it doubled my quantity for both items. Again, like I said, if you needed to, you can go ahead and mark items as free so that you can go ahead and put in maybe a difference. Maybe I'm not actually making cases today. I'm making pounds or 5-pound bags. So I want to go ahead and change that. So it would go ahead and change that, and it would update things as needed. So it would update based on the factor. I'll put that back in. Now, if again I don't want that to update, then I'm going to go ahead and mark that as a fixed item. It will ask me, do I want to go ahead and mark it as a free item? Yes. Free item, I apologize, free item. Now I can go ahead and change that to 5-pound bags and say I'm actually making 20 5-pound bags without changing these. So I went ahead and changed the factor on this or changed the unit on this, but it did not affect these at all. Now, if for some reason everything was a little bit different, maybe the size of the celery was different, maybe the quality was different, whatever might affect your unit to unit ratio, you would want to go ahead and come over to the right to say release standard. Release standard is essentially marking everything as a free item. It's not doing anything to the standard itself. Whenever we reference that standard again for a new pack out, it'll come in exactly as it was. This is just for this pack out. I'm marking everything as a free item and saying it's a free for all. So whatever I need to do, I can update quantities or anything like that. More often, you would have an item like salt marked as a free item because it never takes the same amount of salt for every single packet of soup or whatever the case may be. So anyway, and what I can also do is I can add items if I need to. So if I forgot to add the supply items or anything like that, I can go ahead and click add here and add those supply items if need be. So the standard again is just bringing in those items that you currently had, and I can update as needed. All right. So I've created the pack out. I know I need 20 cases, and I plan on making 10 cases in 25-pound bags. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click save. So for those of you who are not allocating beforehand, if you're letting your pickers go ahead and pick whichever lot they are for these celery sticks, all you'll do is save and go ahead and print. So print, this is the printed packout itself. And it's very, very simple to read. It's basically just here are my items used. If they want to go ahead and enter in that lot number, they can right there. And then the lot number for these will be created once it's actually posted. But so the saving doesn't do anything as far as your inventory is concerned. It's like saving a sales order or saving an open purchase order. It's not doing anything yet. Hasn't affected my inventory. It's simply saving a draft. So I print this out, and so they can go ahead and choose what they are actually pulling, and they can adjust that as needed. So they'll make whatever changes they need to this document. They'll send it back to whoever is going to be updating or posting this pack out in the system. And if it has any changes, we can still make changes. We can still click edit. We can go ahead and change. Maybe they pulled 25 cases instead. So we went ahead and updated this right here. And we went ahead and need to, now of course that didn't update the 5-pound bags because we marked that as a free item. So I need to actually update that as well. All right, so there we go. After they have marked up whatever they need to, and I've made those adjustments, I need to go ahead and allocate. Of course, just like any other transaction in Edible software, I cannot post or I cannot finalize until I've told Edible where I'm pulling from. So you have two options. If they pulled the earliest received lot, or if that's all you really want to do, then you can auto allocate, and that will allocate on a first in, first out basis. So if I click auto allocate, it's going to go ahead and do that. So here I can see my unit cost and my line cost updated, and that is based on the lot that I selected. If I want to see the lot, I just click, I can double click on the quantity in the item used tab, or I can go ahead and click the lots button down here, and that will go ahead and show that information. So here I can see I actually pulled from two lots. I pulled the 20 available cases from this first lot, and I went ahead and pulled 5 cases from this lot. However, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and manually allocate as needed. So you don't have to auto allocate, you can always manually allocate. And for some of you, you may be auto allocating as soon as you enter in the quantity. So that is another option as well. If you don't have to worry about allocating after the fact, you may be auto allocating as you're entering in quantity, and that's perfectly fine too. But just showing you, you can update that allocation if need be. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Oh, whoops. Let me go ahead and put that back in. Oh, what happened here? Sorry, one sec, guys. There we go. Click OK. All right. So this is my line cost for this for the amount that it is. So it is an average cost of the 2 lots that were pulled from. Of course, if it was just pulled from a single lot, then it would be pulling that entire cost there. And then the items made, what happens is it takes that line cost, that full line cost for the items used, and it distributes it to the line cost for these items here. So based on this, I have a line cost. I have 12.5 cases being made, so that has distributed based on that line cost and that quantity. So here is my unit cost for that first item. And then of course, here is my other quantity. Here is my line cost. So here is my unit cost for this quantity or for this line item. So based on what we did, I didn't have any reference lines. So that $225 was split between these based on the quantity. Here we can see the lot number. If I wanted to, depending on your settings, you could manually update that. I can add in a label, of course. So a lot of the same features as like purchasing an item or receiving an item. I can add in that. I can add in notes, an expiration date. I can put an item on hold or a lot on hold if I need to. I can put in pallets. If you are producing for pallets, I can put in a number of pallets and reprint those labels. Otherwise, when I am perfectly done, when this quantity matches what I made, all of the allocation looks good, so the line cost looks good, I'm going to go ahead and click post. It's going to ask me, do I want to post this? I'll click yes, and Packout has been posted successfully. So now this has been marked as completed. It does give you a date and timestamp and a user up at the top, and telling you who created and who posted. And here's my packed on date. So of course it posted as of today. These items now exist, and this quantity has been taken out of inventory. All right. So that is essentially a pack out. That is taking items out and producing items. To show those of you who might use weighted items or catch weight items, I did want to run through another. I did want to run through another option. Oh, by the way, before you use these items, if for some reason there was a problem, you do have the option to void. So if you needed to, you could void this before it's been used in the system. If this item's been used in any transactions, though, then you will not be able to void. But going forward, I'm going to go ahead and create a new one, and I'm actually going to choose a pack out or choose another standard, and I'm going to choose this beef pack code. I'm going to click OK. So here, these are the items that I used or that I selected for this standard. I'm going to go ahead and put in the quantity that I'm using. So typically it was one each equals 2 cases and 1 case here. Let's say I'm not making this beef patty this time. I'm only making the brisket. I'm not worried about this beef patty. So I'm going to go ahead and delete. And it's saying this is part of a Packout standard. It cannot be deleted. So what I would have to do before I delete this is I would have to hit that release standard button. Now I can do whatever I need to. All right. So there. Now bear in mind, it went ahead and deleted the reference to, or deleted the reference to the labor, but it did not delete the labor line. So bear in mind, you will want to go ahead and make sure that that is taken care of. So if I go back in here, make sure that this is referencing the correct one, and I'll go ahead and delete this line. All right. And again, I can update my quantities. Now, of course, I have released, so I will have to go ahead and update everything individually. So if I update this as one each, then it's not going to just be one case, or it's not going to update the amount of cases being made. I have to do that manually. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just say one each, and it was actually about 600 pounds that was used. And this is actually going to make one each. All right. And so if I'm good with my quantities, I can go ahead again, save and print. I'm going to do everything manually here. But I mostly wanted to show you this one because on the catch weight items, of course, we need to specify the weight. Now the weight is going to come in automatically based on the factor, but you will need to go ahead and change the weight as needed. So here, this is one each, and it is actually going to be, see, that's 19 pounds. I'm actually using 19 pounds. Let's just say that. And let's say we're making a 17-pound brisket. It's a big brisket. But I've got a 17-pound brisket. I'm using 19 pounds of this half cow. So that is what I need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and allocate. All right, so it pulls in my line cost, pulls in my unit cost, again, distributes based on the amount that's being made. So when I go ahead and click save, or post, I should say, it will go ahead and post that pack out. So now I have a brisket ready I have one brisket ready at 17 pounds. All right. So again, you can set up the standards however you want. You can go ahead and when you reference those standards in the actual Packout screen, you can do whatever you want if you release that standard. So you can stick strictly to the standard, or you can go outside of the standard if need be. But that is essentially what those are for. All right. So I've just posted 2 packouts, so I hope that the packout process itself makes sense. You'll add your items used, add your items made, make sure your quantities are correct. You can save at any time, but before you post, you do need to make sure that you allocate. All right. So those were just 2 examples of packouts. Now I'm going to run through a couple of other screens in the packout area. So we actually have 2 different areas for raw materials, I should say. One is called raw materials batch calculation, and one is called raw materials for packouts. This one was actually created first, and essentially what this is it allows you to analyze for a finished good. So this is only for finished goods. And for those of you who have never worked with finished goods before or marked items as finished goods, you would do that under inventory and miscellaneous tab. So for that specific item, you'll either mark that item as a finished good or a WIP item. If it's not marked as any, well, essentially any item can be deemed a raw material if need be. But if it's not marked as anything, then it's simply a raw material. Now, of course, a WIP item is a work in process item. A work in process item means that we have a 2 pack out situation happening. Just as an example, if I come back into my pack out standards and I click select standard, I have 2 beef or 2 brisket essentially pack out standards. I have that beef one that I went ahead and did earlier that made the split brisket. So this right here is my work in process item. So I can actually break this down and make another item if I wanted to, which is what I did in this sliced brisket pack out. I indicate that I need that split brisket to make sliced brisket. So the sliced brisket was marked in that inventory item master miscellaneous tab as a finished good. So if I wanted to see my on-hand availability and any sales that I have out there for my finished goods and see basically what I need to make for my finished goods, what I actually need to create for my finished goods, I can run either one of these, but I'm going to run, again, both of them just to show you. So the raw materials for packouts is going to show you everything up front. I go ahead and put in my expected repack date. I'm going to analyze my sales orders through a certain date and consider open POs to be received through a certain date. That all calculates or goes into my available on hand calculation. So when I click refresh, it will show me all of my finished goods. So again, this is the only finished good that I have currently in this database, but it's telling me my unallocated quantity for my sales order. So I have 1,800 pounds that I need. My on hand available is 902. So this is giving me my shortage amount. And I don't have anything on order. So when you run this or when you refresh this, unless you are filtering by a certain item, so you can filter this list by a certain item, I can go ahead and select which items I actually want to look at. And I'm going to go ahead and click go. When I click go, it's going to show me what needs to be made. So here, if I need any raw materials, it will show me those raw materials down here. If I have my work in process, so this is my work in process, that split brisket. And here is my sliced brisket that I need up here. All right. So I actually have a shortage here. I apologize. One sec. Oh, here we go. Let me come back in here. Not sure why it's not showing. Essentially, what it should be showing is any pack outs that need to be made in order to make this. So here I have a my sliced brisket or my split brisket that should be made from that raw material. I'm going to check why that's not showing up. But it would tell me how much I need to make of this in order to make this. So I need to make at least 790 pounds right here. So I'm going to go ahead and put in make now 800. Ah, there it goes. All right. So I went ahead and put in the amount I need. So here's my raw material for that. And now it's giving me this automatically populates with what needs to be made for the finished good. So when I go ahead and click preview packouts, I can look at both of them. So this is my beef one, and this is just showing me what is needed for that beef packout. I can see all of my information. This is just information that would pre-populate. So right now I don't have a country of origin or anything like that. But this is what would be taken out. This is what would be made for each. And then here I have my sliced brisket pack out that would be made as well. So here is what would be taken out, and here's what would be made for that pack out. So when I click create pack outs, and again, I can select one or the other or both, it's going to go ahead and create those pack outs for me. So I don't have to go through the steps of going in there and creating each one necessary. It went ahead and calculated those amounts for me, so I didn't have to do that. So if I come back into process packouts, regular packouts, I can go ahead and select these packouts. And when I hit select packout in the process packouts area, it will show me all of my packouts, whether they've been posted or not, but it will give me a status. So here I have my in process packout for this one. So there we go on that. And then of course I have my, oops, sorry, select back out. There we go. Lost my vision for a second. Here's my sliced brisket pack out that is needed. So here, as soon as I get that raw material in, I can start cutting down and making those pack outs as needed. So again, that screen is not necessarily for everybody, but it is very nice if you do have those multi-pack out situations. So if you, even on the produce side, if you're slicing apples and then making a fruit tray, you might have that same situation. You might want to go ahead and run how many apples do I need for my sliced apples as well as these fruit trays. All right, the other one is the raw materials batch calculation. It is very similar. However, it does not actually create the packouts for you. This is purely for reporting purposes. So you can go ahead and add items individually here. So this isn't just going to automatically refresh based on your finished goods. So I can go ahead and add in what I need. So let's go ahead and just add in that sliced brisket. Where is it? There we go. And go ahead and click OK. And then it should tell you, so that's why I wanted to select that celery item. It will tell you if it's not a finished good, so it will not be added. So it's only going to add items that are finished goods. I'm going to add that sliced brisket. And here, I'm actually going to specify how much I want to manufacture and what it would need, or what I would need to manufacture that amount. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 500 pounds. And you can't change the unit of measure. This is based purely on the master unit of measure. But I can go ahead and do that. Again, after you've added or imported items into this list, and there's a separate import spreadsheet that we can talk about later if you need to, if you would like. But essentially, it's adding this information: the item code, the unit, and the manufactured quantity. Of course, with all of these items in here, I can filter, or I can go ahead and unselect what I want. But when I click go, it's going to show me essentially the same thing. It's going to show me what item what items are needed. So if I said, okay, to make this, here is what I have on hand available. So I don't actually have a shortage in this for this one yet. But if I wanted to make maybe for uh, quantity instead of demand, or I just wanted to have some on hand, I can go ahead and put that in there. And as soon as you put that in, just like the other screen, it will go ahead and populate how much of that raw material you need. So here, again, based on these calculations, based on those packout standards that I had made, it calculates the quantity needed for each item to produce the last item. So here, of course, I can export this to Excel so that I can go ahead and create this later on, or use that raw materials, uh, that other raw materials screen. All right. So again, this one, the batch processing is purely for, or batch calculation is purely for reporting purposes. The raw materials for packouts will actually create those packouts based on those standards created. All right. So again, the consignment packouts, just to show you, I'm not going to actually run through this, but all it is it's the same exact screen. It's simply marked as a consignment packout, and you can only use one lot to make an item made. That is part of the rules for consignments. We cannot create an item using multiple lots. It has to be that one consignment lot in order to create that new item. And of course, that feeds through into the consignment liquidation process, which we are going to talk about on a different training. All right, so from there, I'm not going to talk so much about the packout reservation pools right now. It's not used as widely, so I'm going to go ahead and just ignore that for now. What I am going to talk about really quickly to round this out are the packout reports. So as you can see, packout reports are separate from the normal inventory reports, but they're pretty straightforward as far as what they show. The daily packout recap is simply going to show you uh, for specific inventory items, and if you wanted to, you can choose add-on types to report separately. But you want to, let's say, I want to see everything posted for today, since that's all I got. I can select specific inventory items to look at, but otherwise I'm just going to click refresh, and it will show me what I have posted in that day. So here I can see my packout numbers, my dates, my item codes, my quantity produced, total pounds produced. So here, of course, these celery were regular items, no poundage included. And I can see all of my costs. So I can see any packaging costs or ingredient costs that I might have had. I can see labor or anything like that. Uh, so that is pretty much that screen. It just gives you a really basic recap as to what is being in or what has been posted and what went into posting that item. The packout cost and lot details looked very similar to the packout report that we saw earlier, the printed packout that we saw earlier. And you can actually print this from the packout screen itself. But this is just going into more detail as to what lots were used, what supply items were used, and basically the cost information. So again, in here, I can choose whether I want to look at just posted, in process, or both. I can choose a specific packout based on this date range. So if I want to just look at one, I could go ahead and just look at that. And I can also select packouts by lots used. So lots packed out within the repacking date range selected above, and I can choose a specific lot. So I can select based on these lots used, or I can go lots received within, and then select from there. Of course, here uh, printing on the actual report, do I want to print the yield percentage, printing receiving date of lots used, print country of origin. So this is just extra information if you wanted to see it on the printed report. But essentially, this is what the report looks like. So here I have my products used for this pack out is my half side. I used one each, 19 pounds. Here was my lot, my unit cost, everything like that. My items made, 17 pounds. So line ratio, unit cost, and then of course my labor down here. And that's essentially it. So it just kind of lays out, again, the summary of that pack out. And here I can see this yield percentage. So I used up 89%, or about 89.47% of the items used. All right, and of course you can export that to Excel or anything like that. All right. Packout projection is another thing very similar to that raw materials grid that we saw. The packout projection just puts it in a summarized form. So if I run this packout projection, again, it's going based on finished goods, and I can prepare a forecast for starting from today for the next week or for next number of days. I can run by ship date or delivery date. I can calculate the average sales or manufacturing per day for the period, or per workday or weekday. And I can specify what that average is based on this date. And pack outline is something else. We'll skip that for now. But of course, I can also run specifically for a particular item. But if I'm going to run for all, which I'm just going to do here, I can go ahead and run in here, and it will show me all of my items, and it will show me if I need any or what items are being sold. So here I have a total of the 1800. Oops, sorry. When you double click, it actually removes it from the list. So let me back in here. So in here, I have 1800 that need to be made or are being sold. So I need to go ahead and make that 1800. So again, this is just summarized. It's not going into great detail as far as it's just showing very, very specifically who's it going to and how much you need, and that's basically it. So uh, it's not a it's not as detailed as the raw material grid or anything like that. And then of course I could. This is just a this is just a screen, so there's no export to Excel or anything like that. So I believe I could have this report minimized, and I can go ahead and run and do something else. Oh, nope, I apologize. So no, you would have to go ahead and just run this and basically look at that information. Yep. Okay. So anyway, back to my Packout reports. Packout standards, literally just a list of your Packout standards and what they are. So if I went ahead and previewed this, it just shows me, again, my Packout standards. Here's my codes. Here are the items being used. Here's the items being made. Here are the items used. Any add-ons, so on and so forth. So again, very summarized version of the Packout standards themselves. Audit log. I actually haven't worked with the audit log as much, so we can skip that for now. I know it's not used as much. Product shrinkage. So if I needed to look up shrinkage, I can go ahead and run this. So right now I don't have any shrinkage. So yeah, so that one, I don't have anything to report for, but if you wanted to report for shrinkage, very straightforward report. You select the date and it will run any packouts that had shrinkage for that date. And then provisionally received quantity is not something that everybody uses, so we'll skip that for today. But that is basically it for packouts. So again, it's just taking one item code or multiple item codes and making it into another, or vice versa, taking a single item code and making multiple out of that item code. So that is essentially packouts. You can also pack out a single item code into the same item code. Whatever you need this for, it's a great way to move quantity from one place to the other as far as lots are concerned, and keeping traceability. So that is essentially it. Thank you guys for showing up. If, of course, again, if you have any questions, please send something in the chat window or send me a separate email, and we'll go ahead and answer any questions that you may have following up at the end of the week. And of course, if you would like more information, if you needed to or if you wanted to train on this specifically a little bit more, please let me know and we can get that scheduled as well. Again, thank you for coming. I hope you had a great Labor Day. Welcome back, and we will go ahead and continue on later this week and, of course, next week. So thank you guys. Have a great day.